Many people compare the current economic situation with the situation in 1929. And Bush, during his 8 years of presidency, and Reagan before him, have pretty much repealed the New Deal that Roosevelt, and that was the solution to the 29 crisis. Roosevelt gave us Social Security and the WPA, and now if Obama comes in and does the same thing, the Roosevelt cure, why won't that solve our problem?
Well, because I don't. The people that Obama surrounded himself with Larry Summers, Timothy Geithner, I mean, his whole team, they're virtually all proteges of Robert Rubin, who's a former Goldman Sachs CEO and has been the highest paid director of Citigroup since 1999. I mean, this is the same crowd that created the problem, and so where is there going to be some transformation in which they suddenly see the light as to what was wrong with what they created in the first place? I'm very, very pessimistic. I think that the situation is far more complex than it was back in 1929. I mean, the fact that we've created all of these complicated, sophisticated financial instruments, credit swaps, exchange portfolios, I mean, an endless number of sophisticated financial instruments, which part of their aim was that the only people who really understood them were the creators themselves. The government didn't understand them, law enforcement agencies didn't understand them, the media didn't understand them, and so long as everything was going hunky-dory and everybody, well, the people who built them were getting rich, it was fine. But now they've collapsed, and I don't think the Obama team knows how to fix it. It's what it finally comes down. I don't think a replication of Roosevelt's New Deal is going to do the trick. I'm much more pessimistic. I agree with Gerald Salante, whose his latest piece is that Obama says yes we can, and Gerald Salante says no we can't. That it simply may not be feasible.
You also taught computer science at Duke. I started out as a computer engineer before going to law school, so computers are one of my pet interests. Free open source software has made significant advances in recent years. Large countries such as Brazil and South Africa are financing it with public funds. Do you believe that it will ultimately put Microsoft out of business and possibly cause a significant democratization of the world economy?
I guess I'm really not qualified to say whether it will put Microsoft out of business. That seems a bit unlikely, but I have much stronger opinions about the second part of your question of whether it will lead to significant democratization of the world. And I actually don't believe that. I think it's a myth that's perpetrated by, well, starting with Bill Gates and Bill Clinton in the 1990s, that the internet and microcomputers are going to enhance democracy. I actually don't believe that. I think it's a distinct possibility it is precisely the opposite. Because if one is interested in introducing change in this in the country or the world, if you sit glued to your computer terminal for hours a day, you're a threat to no one. And what we seem to have attracted, I mean, there were a lot of people on the internet in the recent presidential elections, but people who sit glued to the internet, they don't change anything. And I think what one needs, if one wants more democracy, is people out in the streets, people running campaigns, doing the traditional things, and sitting looking at at one screen, I think is the antithesis of that. So I'm pessimistic about computers leading to democratization of anything.
You know, the Obama campaign bragged that they got most of their donations over the internet, and mostly small donations. And this created an enormous amount of money for him to campaign.
But in the final analysis, Obama got the big money from the same places that McCain and everybody else does, and Obama's election is certainly nothing to encourage us in terms of democracy. I mean, one of my big problems with the American political system is that essentially our political system is owned, operated, and controlled by corporate America. And so long as that is the case, I mean, the liberal panacea for fixing this is that what you do is if you elect the right liberal Democrat and then you have campaign finance reform laws, you can put those in place and everything will then be okay. But how do you ever get campaign laws enacted if the people who control the system like the system the way it is now? And so I think that campaign finance reform is an illusion. It's not going to happen. That we're beyond the realm of possibility of fixing the system because corporate America owns the system and they like it just the way it is.
It's an obscene amount of money that's spent on every campaign, and it gets bigger. I remember a few years ago, one of the senators in New York State spent $1 million on his campaign, and I thought that was terrible. I added up 50 states, $50 million. But now that's small change.
That's kid stuff. Yeah, right.
On page 15 of your book, you write that in November of 2004, there was a radical consultation in Middlebury, Vermont. Can you tell us about that? Was this the start of the secessionist movement in Vermont?
Well, by that time we were into the movement about a year because it officially started in October of 2003, but the Middlebury conference was very significant. It was held 3 days after George Bush was reelected to the presidency. And Kirkpatrick Sale and I organized this whole conference. Only about 40 people attended it down at the Middlebury Inn in Middlebury, and it was sponsored by a small journal, a group of decentralists, co-sponsored with decentralists out of the UK as well. And we're basically looking at the question. Is there any alternative to the American empire? What are our options? And we examined the possibility of political reform, of a revolution, some kind of bottom-up grassroots approach, and secession, and concluded at that gathering that secession was really the only viable option for the reasons that I spoke of a few minutes ago. It seemed to me that really that the U.S. government is really corrupt to the core because it's owned by corporate America. The country has become unsustainable, ungovernable, and unfixable, and so we ruled out political reform as an alternative, and revolution or rebellion. We also rejected any form of violence, and concluded secession was the way to go. And out of that conference it gave birth to the Middlebury Institute, which is a sister organization of the Second Vermont Republic, which studies independence movements, secession movements all over the United States and globally, and promotes the idea of independence and secession, particularly in North America. The interesting thing about that Middlebury gathering was that it attracted more international media attention than any little conference that I ever had, because the Monday after the conference was over, Le Devoir, the leading French newspaper in Canada, ran a front page article on the meeting, and it was picked up all over the world. So it was a tiny meeting of only 40 people, but it attracted a lot of attention worldwide.
After the meeting during the day, I think you went over to the Middlebury Library, for another smaller meeting. And that's when I think I first became...
oh, that's right. You attended that mock town meeting that night.
Yes.
In the library, right.
I didn't know about the meeting at the end during the day, but somehow I found out about the mock town meeting. That was the first that I was exposed to the idea that Vermont, of all states, would want to secede. And I had never really thought about it before, but at the end of the meeting, I voted for secession.
Oh, good.